Good morning everyone and welcome to the class. We are doing the chapter Crisis of Democratic Order, and in the previous class we have discussed the result of the election of 1977, March 1977. In this election we have seen that the Janata Party became victorious. Janata Party and allies were in the majority position, and the Congress was defeated badly. It won only 154 seats, and the Janata Party formed the government. And one more thing which we have noticed, that in the result of the election we have seen that in the northern India the Congress was defeated very badly, because the people in North India experienced very bad consequences of emergency, and that was the reason of the defeat of Congress. And in the southern part of India, the Congress won good number of seats. And after the election, after the result, the Janata Party formed the government, but from the beginning there was conflict. The first conflict was regarding the post of the Prime Minister, who will hold the post of Prime Minister. We have seen that there were three contenders, Chaudhry Charan Singh, Morarji Desai and Babu Jagjeevan Ram. And in this, first of all, Morarji Desai became the Prime Minister of the country, but we were seeing that these different parties who formed the Janata Party, there was a lack of common program. There was lack of direction and leadership, and that is why the government was not able to work for a longer period of time. And we saw that in less than 18 months, what happened, that the Janata Party it split, and the government lost its majority. And then what happened, that Morarji Desai has to resign from the post of Prime Minister, because he was the majority was not with him. And then we see that Chaudhry Charan Singh becomes the Prime Minister, and now this the government, which was formed under the leadership of Chaudhry Charan Singh, was getting support from the Congress, but the Congress withdrew its support in 4 months. And after that, what happened, that the country has to face fresh elections, and fresh elections were held in 1980. And in this election we see that the performance of the Congress was again very wonderful performance was given by Congress. It won 353 seats in the Lok Sabha, and it again came back to the same position which it was holding after the general election of 1971. So again there was dominance of Congress. Okay, and now it was proved that people want stability, and the governance which was given by Janata Party was has not the support of the people. People were not liking the government, the instability which was there, and that is the reason that the Congress again comes to power. And now we are in the last segment of the chapter, and in this we will see the legacy of the emergency. We have seen that the Congress started to it started to become to lose its character from the year 1969. we have seen that the Congress split. There was a split in the Congress, and then there was election in the year 1971, and in this election the Congress performance was very good. It come back to power. Not only it come back to power, but the performance which was given by the Congress in the election of 1971, that was spectacular, and it was there was a fear that Congress will not be able to the Congress will not be able to again achieve that dominant position in the Indian politics. It was the speculation, but after the election of 1971, everything was proved wrong, and the Congress was again in the dominant position as it was during the first 3 general elections. But we see that Congress again becomes powerful. It again becomes dominant in the national politics, in the state politics. Everywhere Congress was there. But what we find that the Congress lost its nature, basic nature जो कांग्रेस का था वो अब नहीं रह गया था, because we have seen in the second chapter, during the first 3 general election, Congress was an ideology. Congress was a coalition of different ideologies and different social groups. It was not representing a single social group, or it was not representing a single ideology, but it was a coalition. People belonging to different social groups, people belonging to different ideologies were the member of Congress. Everyone was there in the Congress. It was an umbrella party. It was like a coalition. But after 1969, the restoration which was done by Mrs. Gandhi, that was only कि हाँ कांग्रेस फिर से डोमिनेंट पोजीशन में आ गई, उसने उतने सीट्स फिर से जीत लिए, लेकिन जो बेसिक नेचर था वो चेंज हो गया. अब कांग्रेस जो थी वो सिर्फ एक पर्टिकुलर सोशल ग्रुप की ही पार्टी रह गई थी, एंड दैट सोशल ग्रुप वाज द पुअर पीपल. And in this poor people, there were SCs, STs, then laborer workers. All these were, only poor section was there in the Congress, and the ideology was also shrink हो गया, बहुत limited हो गया. Only one ideology was there, and that was socialist. Congress was projecting itself as the party of the poor people. So the basic nature जो है वो चेंज हो गया. जो अभी तक कोalition ऑफ सोशल ग्रुप था, जो अभी तक कोalition ऑफ आइडियोलॉजीज था, अब वहाँ पर सिर्फ एक ही सोशल ग्रुप था, वो था पुअर. एक ही आइडियोलॉजी था और वो था सोशलिस्ट. So this change came in the nature of Congress, and with this we see that there was change in the role of opposition also. Now the opposition started to unite, because they were knowing that why the Congress is in a dominant position, because non-Congress votes are getting divided, because the opposition of the opposition parties are so many in numbers. So now what happened, that from 1969 it started that the opposition parties started to unite, and this was culminated in the election of 1977, when we find that all the opposition parties were under one party, that was Janata Party, and they were able to win the election also because of this unity. So this change was coming. One more important change, and what was that change? Now we are seeing that the Congress was representing the poor people only, and the dominant social group within poor class is the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. So the Congress was now become a party of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, and in this process what happened, that the other backward caste, they were losing their identity. They were in need of some political party which will represent them. They were in need of some political parties जहाँ पर उनके इंटरेस्ट को प्रोटेक्ट किया जा सके. And in this way, the polarization starts in Indian politics, and we find that these backward caste, they were started to get representation in the opposition parties. In the year 1977, assembly elections were also held, and in these assembly elections we find that in the northern India, the states were non-Congress. In the election of state assemblies, the result was that non-Congress governments were formed in the northern part of the country. And these non-Congress government which was formed in the state, they knew that the SC and ST is with Congress, तो अब उसको focus नहीं करना है. Now they were focusing on the backward caste. That is only vote politics. कैसे वोट लिया जाए, क्योंकि अब SC ST तो चला गया कांग्रेस के साथ, तो उस पर अब ध्यान देने की जरूरत नहीं है. अब हम एक नया न्यू क्लास के लिए हम लड़ेंगे, और वो है हमारा अदर बैकवर्ड कास्ट. एंड मंडल कमीशन जो हमारा आता है, मंडल कमीशन का जो अपॉइंटमेंट हुआ था, दैट वाज ड्यूरिंग द जनता पार्टी गवर्नमेंट ओनली. तो जिस तरह से इंदिरा गांधी ने जो SC ST के इंटरेस्ट को आगे बढ़ाया, तो जो अपोजिशन पार्टी थी उनके पास भी कोई मुद्दा होना चाहिए. दे नीड सम टॉपिक, दे नीड सम इश्यू, दे नीड समथिंग टू रिप्रेजेंट ना. तो जब पुअर सेक्शन को उन्होंने ले लिया अपने साथ, तो इन्होंने जो बैकवर्ड कास्ट था उनको अपने साथ लिया, उनके इंटरेस्ट को दे स्टार्टेड टू रिप्रेजेंट. एंड मंडल कमीशन का जो अपॉइंटमेंट था वो इसी का नतीजा था. और जो आज के समय में हम जो OBCs को मिला है रिजर्वेशन, दैट इज ऑल्सो द रिजल्ट ऑफ पॉलिटिक्स ऑफ दैट टाइम ओनली. ओके, so this was also started. And not only this, we see that the emergency was created, a period of constitutional crisis. Why there was constitutional crisis? Because from where it originated? It originated from the conflict between the parliament and executive on the one hand and judiciary on the other hand. And why this conflict emerged? Because of some loopholes in the constitution, because there was ambiguity regarding this. On the one hand, people were given right to freedom, right to property. On the other hand, in the directive principle of state policy, it was given that there must be reduction in the gap between the rich and the poor. So this emergency was the result of constitutional crisis, and not only constitutional crisis but political crisis was also there, because the emergency was proclaimed by the party, by the government which was having the support of the majority. In spite of having the support of the majority, the government opted for the imposition of national emergency, because there was a problem with the election of the prime minister. And during this period we have seen how the power was misused by the government. It was the view of the constitution makers that in our country the foundation of democracy is so strong that the government will not misuse the emergency powers, and that is why such provision was done by the constitution makers. But we have seen that this emergency provisions were misused by the government. So this political crisis was very much serious, and Another critical issue which emerged during this period was the role and extent of mass protest. In a democracy, people have the right to protest. No one can deprive people of this right. But what should be the extent of public protest? What should be the role of the public protest? So, we see that there was a tension between institution-based democracy and democracy based on spontaneous political participation. We have institutions. We were having all the institutions, democratic institutions. Parliament was there, executive was there, everything was democratic. But still, there was participation of people became so much, the degree of the participation became very high, and that became one of the reason which is given by the ruling party to impose emergency. So all these controversies are associated with the imposition of emergency, and this also created a lot of new questions, new problems, which so many movements started after this period. Then regional aspirations were also started. So now we have completed this chapter, and in the next class we will start a new chapter. But before that, we will have a look in your book, because there are so many cartoons and pictures which is given in your book which need to be interpreted. So let's have a look in your book. So this is your chapter, The Crisis of Democratic Order, and in this chapter you will see so many figures and cartoons are there which need to be interpreted. And in this figure we can see the situation, the economic crisis which was prevailing after the election of 1971. It is depicted through this picture, and we have seen that at that time the India was involved in war with Pakistan, and not only this, that the US has also stopped giving aid to India, and because of all these things, the country was facing acute economic problem. Moreover, the petrol prices were also rising sharply because of the Arab-Israel War of 1973. So we have seen that Mrs. Indira Gandhi, she came to power on the promise of, on the slogan of remove poverty, गरीबी हटाओ, है ना? But what was situation there after this election was that the prices were rising very sharply and the country was facing huge economic crisis. So it is the desire, the question of the common man, that when this 1973 will be hut out, means कब ये हटेगा, कब ये जो problem हमारे सामने आ खड़ा हुआ है, economic crisis, when it will be removed. This is the question of common people. So there are another pictures also, and we will consider them also. You can see in this picture, this is the situation which was prevailing at that time. You can see it here, corruption, lawlessness, violence. So this was the atmosphere because of sharp price rise, because of corruption. People were agitating, they were protesting at a very large scale, and this protest was there in the almost all the parts of the country. Mainly, we have discussed about the situation which was prevailing in Bihar, and it did not limit only to Bihar, but it expanded to other parts of the country. And this the man who is sitting in the center, he is Jayaprakash Narayan, and the slogan is Save Democracy, because the act of the government was not according to the need of the people. So the government was working undemocratically, and this protest was done under the leadership of Jayaprakash Narayan. So he is saying that he is there to save democracy. He wants that the democracy should be saved. But what was how was he projected? He is projected as if he is trying to subvert democracy. Because of protest, because of agitation, the democratically elected government was not able to perform its functions. So this man, this Jayaprakash Narayan, he was trying to subvert the democracy, and he is trying to create lawlessness. He is trying to create chaos in the country, and he want to remove Indira Gandhi and to grab power. So he was projected like that by the ruling party, but the actual condition was not this was not the reality, but he was projected in that way only. And then we will see. This is the picture of Indira Gandhi. She is sitting on her chair of Prime Minister. She is the president. है ना? And this is particularly that time when uh, her election was declared illegal by the Allahabad High Court. On 12th June 1975, we have seen that her election was mm, declared illegal. And then there was an appeal in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court gave her a partial stay. The stay was that she will remain MP, but she will not take part in the proceedings of the Lok Sabha. So now we are seeing that this was the political crisis. On the one hand, the crisis was with judiciary. On the other hand, people were also agitating, protesting against the government. So this was the situation. You can see it is like flood, है ना? फ्लड में जो कंडीशन हो जाती है हमारी, जो गवर्नमेंट थी वो उस तरह की फ्लड के सिचुएशन में फंसी हुई थी, प्रॉब्लम्स में फंसी हुई थी, है ना? गवर्नमेंट वाज इन द पॉलिटिकल क्राइसिस. But what you see, that people are still there. You can see here the large number of people are there in support of the prime minister. They are still supporting the prime minister. Indira Gandhi, we can say her craze was so much among the common people that people were with Mrs. Gandhi. Though agitations were happening, protests were happening, but these agitations and protest was done only by a small group of people, we can say it. If we compare the number of people who were supporting her and the number of people who were organizing protest and demonstration. So अगर हम दोनों नंबर्स को कंपेयर करें तो हमें ये समझ में आता है जो प्रोटेस्ट करने वाले थे उनका नंबर काफी कम था. अभी भी जो मेजोरिटी थी वो इंदिरा गांधी के साथ थी, और बिकॉज ऑफ दिस सपोर्ट शी was not ready to step down, because now her election was declared invalid. And if the Supreme Court also gave the verdict that her election remains invalid, then in that case he has to contest a new election, because he was no more an MP. है ना? तो उस सिचुएशन में हो सकता है वो हार जाती इलेक्शन, एंड she will not be able to become the to remain the prime minister. तो ये जो सिचुएशन था, एक तरफ क्राइसिस है, एक तरफ जुडिशरी के साथ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट हो रहा है, एक तरफ स्ट्राइक्स हो रहे हैं, प्रोटेस्ट हो रहा है, पीपल आर अगेंस्ट हर, बट जितने लोग उसके अगेंस्ट थे उससे कहीं ज्यादा उसके साथ थे. And because of support of people, this support of people gave the Prime Minister the strength to use this provision of national emergency. Because इतना मैसिव सपोर्ट जब उसके पास था, उसके साथ था, तो फिर उसको स्टेप डाउन करने का कोई सेंस नहीं था. दिस इज व्हाट द पर्सन हु इज बिहाइंड हर चेयर, हु इज ही इज the Congress president. At that time, he was the Congress president, Barua, D.K. Barua. And he is saying that you should not step down because you have such a massive support. So, massive support था. But situation ये था कि उनको step down करना पड़ सकता था. तो what was done? Declaration of emergency. Okay, so this was the condition which was prevailing at that time. Then you can see these are the newspapers, headlines of newspaper. Um, in these you can see how state of emergency was declared, several leaders arrested. So all these were the headlines of the newspaper. And in this particular, in this section, you can see it is written the city edition of Friday and Saturday of the Hindustan Times could not be uh, brought out as no power was available from 12:45 p.m. on Thursday till 7:15 p.m. on Friday. So we have gone through all these things now. That after the declaration of emergency, what was done by the government, that the electricity supply was cut to the these offices of the press, and there was no newspaper was published for the next 2 days. So this is the condition. It is given in the newspaper, and now we will see. Yes, you can see it here. Big officials, intellectuals, social leaders, and citizens all were there in support of Mrs. Gandhi. People were not against Mrs. Gandhi. Who were protesting against the government, who were organizing rallies and strikes and all, that was a very small group. The rest of the population, we can say the big officials, the intellectuals, the social leaders, the religious leaders, citizens, they were supporting the government. Now, this is the situation when we have seen. I told you that after this end of emergency, elections were held and Janta government became came to the power. And this Janta government appointed a commission, which was called Saha Commission, to examine that was there need to proclaim emergency, national emergency in the country, and whatever done during the emergency was valid or not. So the Shah Commission gave its report, and in this report, it held Indira Gandhi guilt. So this is the cartoon which is depicting how was justice was not prevailing in the country when this national emergency was proclaimed in the country. At that time, the government has ended justice in the country. So this is, you can see it here, this is the statue of justice, isn't it? And this is our Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. And by this proclamation of emergency, there was no justice. Justice was ended. And this picture is depicting that situation. And now we will see, yes, now again, his Congress President Barua, and this is the time when the emergency was declared in the mid of 1975, that is 25th June 1975. The emergency was declared, and when the new year came, that was January 1976, uh, even that time it was said that it is this in this picture, this man is depicting the country. Okay, so the Congress president is saying, no, not yet. It is still risky for you to be on your own. Means this is not the time to end the emergency, because by this time, even by this time, the country was not ready to be peaceful and calm. जो कंडीशन प्रिवेल कर रहा था बिफोर इलेक्शन, बिफोर प्रोक्लेमेशन ऑफ इमरजेंसी, अभी भी अगर हमने इमरजेंसी को हटाया विद इन 6 मंथ्स, अगर हमने इमरजेंसी को हटा दिया तो क्या होगा कि पीस जो है वो नहीं आ पाएगी. तो इसलिए 6 मंथ्स में हम नहीं हटाएंगे. 6 मंथ्स में न्यू न्यू ईयर आ गया है ना. तो दिस इज सेड बाय द कांग्रेस प्रेसिडेंट. नाउ you can see this picture is depicting the result of the election of 1980 1977. 1977 मार्च में जो इलेक्शन होता है आफ्टर द एंड ऑफ इमरजेंसी. इमरजेंसी 1977 की जनवरी में एंड हो जाती है, एंड देन elections were held in the month of March in 1977. And in this election, we have seen that the Congress was defeated badly. It managed to win only 154 seats. So it was the Congress has never experienced this kind of defeat in the country from the beginning. कभी भी ऐसी हार जो है वो कांग्रेस ने फेस नहीं की थी. तो यू कैन सी दिस मैन इज डिपिक्टिंग कांग्रेस, एंड वन ऑफ इट्स हैंड इज इमरजेंसी. व्हाई दिस मैन हैज क्यों इसकी ये कंडीशन हुई है, व्हाट इज द रीजन फॉर दिस कंडीशन ऑफ द मैन हु इज डिपिक्टिंग द कांग्रेस पार्टी? बिकॉज ऑफ इमरजेंसी. Because in during emergency, the atrocities which was done by the government was the reason for the defeat of the Congress party. And in this hand you can see, in the right hand of the person, it's a kind of tool which is used to fight, है ना. And in this tool you can see what are the tools which were used by the government to suppress the opposition. One is censor. The press was not free during this time because censorship laws were implemented. No piece of news can be published in the newspaper without the approval of the government. Then government has also passed an act which was called MISA, Maintenance of Internal Security Act. And this act was also for the purpose of maintenance of internal security, and on the basis of this act so many atrocities were done against the common people. Then the third tool is 42nd amendment. This amendment was brought by the government during this emergency period only, and by this amendment the government made an attempt to establish the supremacy of the parliament. So these were the reasons for which the Congress was defeated. It misused its power. It did injustice with the people, and that is the cause of its defeat. You can see in this picture, you can see the result of the Lok Sabha election of 1977 has been shown. The green color, this green color is showing the Janata Party, how Janata Party was in a winning situation in the whole of North India. And you can see the yellow color is depicting the Congress Party. So the condition of Congress Party is very bad. But in South India, as I told you, that in South India, the Congress the performance of the Congress Party was not so bad. Actually, it has won a good number of seats in the south. You can see so many yellow colors are there. So these yellow colors are depicting the condition of Congress. And then you can see it here. It's his Morarji Desai, the condition which was prevailing in the country after the election of 1977. Janata Party was formed, but this Janata Party was lacking a common program. It was lacking a direction, a leadership, and because of this, there was so many different people belonging to different ideology were there in the Janata Party, and because of this, the Janata Party was not able to function properly. You can see he's Morarji Desai, and he is saying, I can't hear you, because so many people are there, so many demands are there. Expectation of people were also very high because they were highly dissatisfied with the national emergency which was there for the 18 months. But now the government, the Janata government, is not able to fulfill the demands of the people. And we have seen that within 18 months, this Janata government uh, comes to an end because there was a split in the Janata Party, and Morarji Desai was not remained as Prime Minister. And then Chaudhry Charan Singh becomes the Prime Minister of the country with the support of the Congress only. So this picture is depicting that situation, and in this you can say, by all means, let us get under one umbrella. But let me do it first. So umbrella is depicting the Janata Party, because in Janata Party so many different parties were there together, but they were ready to be together. But now, after the formation of government, there was conflict among different political parties. So this picture is depicting that conflict which was existing between the different political parties. So this is the last picture. You can see Indira Bulao Desh Bachao. When we experienced the country experienced the instability after the election of 1977. There was change of prime minister, and the country was not having a stable government. So it was now established in the mind of the people that only Indira can give them a stable government. And that is the reason we have seen that in the election of 1980, the Congress again became victorious, and it repeated the performance which is shown in the election of 1971. The same performance was again repeated by the Congress in 1980, and you can see it here, sweeping the polls. सबको सफाया कर दिया, इसको कहते हैं ना, दिस इज कॉल्ड सफाया करना. इंदिरा गांधी की पार्टी ने सब सारी अपोजिशन पार्टी का सफाया कर दिया, सबको झाड़ू लगा के उन्होंने डस्टबिन के अंदर कर दिया और खुद विक्टोरियस बन करके वो सामने आ जाती है। ठीक है, तो दिस इज द ऑल अबाउट योर chapter. We have completed our chapter, and now in the next class we will discuss our last chapter. Okay, so that is all for today.